Welcome to Thrive Talks, and we have here with us today Shruthi Shankar Kumar, who is a yoga instructor and a performing carnatic singer. It's a wonderfully beautiful combination, and I'm sure each other complement, right?
Yes, of course.
They
Both
do.
of them do go hand in hand.
Yeah, they do, right? Yeah, thank you so much for accepting to be part of this Thrive Talk series. And I've been very curious to know how yoga can actually impact mental health. I know it does in many ways, but I want to make sure that those are the ways it actually impacts. And I know a lot of athletes who actually use yoga as part of their mental training as well. Although, in terms of scholarly articles or something, it may not or may be the case. There is a kind of differing opinion there, right? So, wanted to check on that today, and that's why we're having this conversation. I believe completely that because yoga is a lot of interoceptive work and breath work, I think it makes a big difference when it comes to the mind, very indirectly, right? So, yeah, we're going to talk all about it today. And our first episode is going to be about threat and challenge states, one of my favorite topics as well.
All right.
So, in your practice, how do you think breath shifts in a person when they get a little anxious?
So I think like what we all definitely realize eventually at some point of time is that the breath is actually a very good indicator of our mental state at a particular point of time. So it may not be apparent to us right at the start, but I think over a period of time you kind of start to realize that the moment you start getting some kind of anxious thoughts or anxiety or anything, probably more in the negative sense, your breath does tend to become a little more shallow. And when we generally are in a calm state of mind, the breath can be a little more soft and subtle, and that difference may not be visible right at the offset, but once we start to kind of understand our own bodies, understand our mind state, we can start to perceive that the mental state definitely does affect the breath a lot.
Okay. So you do see that breath shift, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So yes, like the way we can identify it is that we take a minute to pause in the middle of like whatever we are doing. If you really want to understand what your state of mind is at that point of time, just pause just for like half a minute or 1 minute and just observe your breathing. And
too fast?
Yes.
Or too slow, right?
So the moment you see that it's a little bit rushed and you feel like, okay, something is off, you feel like something is going on in your mind, which you may not even realize until the moment you actually observe your breath. And that's when you take that pause, and when you realize that, okay, something is not right, right, and then you start to look back into what's going on in your head, and then maybe you can figure out at that point of time.
I guess this is why even pranayama helps, right? Because from a breath rate of, let's say, 17 breaths per minute or 12 breaths per minute, you're bringing it down to 4, if anything, right? If you're doing box breathing, then you bring it down to 4, 5.
Right.
And that makes you breathe a lot slower, which means you're also like, from a nervous system perspective, you bring it
perfectly
slower.
Absolutely, right? Yes. So, of course, there are a lot of different types of pranayama practices that are there.
Yeah.
So, the easiest way to actually start practicing pranayama, or I wouldn't even say pranayama in the traditional sense, but more just
breathing
breath
practices,
work, any kind of breathing practice, is to simply try and keep count of the number of seconds that you are inhaling and the number of seconds that you're breathing out. And that itself is a good indicator of how many breaths you're taking in a minute, right? So you observe for a minute, and I would say like a good place to start would be to actually try and incorporate an equal inhale-exhale ratio in your breathing just for some time. So take out 2 or 3 minutes or 5 minutes, how much ever you have time, at that moment. And you just see if you can equalize your breathing to say 5 seconds of inhale, 5 seconds of exhale. And then eventually we want to really work on building that up. And what we usually say in the yoga practice is to try and make the exhalation as long as possible, because that is where you are really regulating the nervous system. You are slowing down the heart rate. So the moment we start working towards a much longer exhalation, we can see that the heart rate does definitely slow. And there are studies that where people have measured their heart rates after a significant practice of pranayama, and where you can see that there's a very significant shift in the heart heart rate also once you complete the pranayama practice.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think this definitely is something we use as well, and we have taken it from studies of the of yoga practices and breath work as well. And I think it does make a big difference in terms of it's easier to tell an athlete to breathe longer or slower, right? Instead of telling them work on your mind, work on your cognition, and all of that. It's a lot easier, and this is a much easier way for them to start being aware of their thoughts as well, isn't it? Yeah. So, I mean, this brings me to my next question. So, this we would call it as conscious breath work. And how do you think this conscious breath work can, change a person's threat state, and bring them back to the present moment? So, just a second before we go on to this question. Just for our viewers, challenge state is basically a time where they are feeling stressed, but they're able to actively still engage, and they're a lot more confident than anxious. So they're actually able to perform. But when it comes to threat state, they are stressed, but they're not able to perform as well. They're completely in the survival mode, and they probably zone out. They are not able to function. They're not able to think clearly. So that's the difference here. And that's what I'm asking Shruthi.
Yeah, so before we jump into the breath work or the pranayama part of it, I would say that it's actually, from a yoga perspective, it's important to build a good foundation in asana practice as well, because you cannot tell someone to inhale and exhale for at least 5 seconds or at least 10 seconds unless their accessory muscles support that length of breathing.
Absolutely.
So it's not possible to start a beginner with pranayama. You have to teach them asana. You have to support their muscles to such an extent where they are actually able to get the full benefit out of pranayama, because I can keep practicing pranayama every day, but I won't be able to breathe in and out more than 3 or 5 seconds. And that's not helping me in any way at all. My breath is still going to be shallow. So the first place I would say to start is to actually first build a strong foundation in asana practice, and side by side you work on pranayama. So that is one thing I wanted to tell everyone who wants to start breathing practices, also to work on the asana practice and preparing the body to actually practice pranayama comfortably. So that is one thing. And how I think pranayama can help to navigate a threat state of the mind. See, in my opinion, like we have, when we are in the threat state, generally there's a lot of chaos going on in the head, right? Like we have like 100 different things that are basically just muddling up in your head, and you don't know what to do at that point of time. So again, in a yoga perspective, I would say that the breath is a really good place to anchor, where we can bring focus onto something. So, which is eventually what we do in meditation also. But obviously, from a sports perspective, you can't just sit and meditate like when you're in the middle of
in a ground.
So that's not something that is practically possible. But focusing or aligning the mind on the breath is something that is very doable, even for like a very short period of time. So just try to pull away from everything, and now you have the breath to already focus on. It's not like you have to kind of think, okay, what should I do now? What do I anchor my mind to? You don't have to worry about that. So you can use the breath as a tool to anchor the mind at one particular juncture, and just kind of keep focus on that. So observing the breath, and this comes back to the first thing that we spoke, where when we observe the breath, we know that it is shallow, we know that we are in a threat state. So at that point, we can try to breathe more consciously.
And slower.
Just a simple thing to do is say I am breathing in and breathing out only for 3 or 4 seconds. The first thing I will try to do at that point of time is to just increase it by 1 second or 2 seconds. And I'm putting in that effort to really regulate my breathing, which in turn regulates the heart rate, which regulates the nervous system. So we have that
emotions,
and we have that cyclic thing, which helps to eventually navigate the threat state and bring the mind to a more comfortable position.
Superb. That actually sounds exactly how we work on things. And we also do pick a lot of things from yoga, and definitely I think it does make a massive difference when it comes to shifting athletes from a threat state to being present at that moment, right? So yes, thank you so much for speaking about it. In our next episode, we are going to talk quite a bit about embodiment and introceptions and other details which intersect with yoga and polyvagal theory, which again is one of my favorite theories as well. So again, we are going to be talking a lot on that. Thank you so much for watching.